Hey guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at setting up the X button on the Xbox controller to be a use button, and we're going to do that in Playmaker. So this scene is a scene that I've set up in previous tutorials, so if you haven't seen them, go back and have a look. The only thing we're really going to need is this FPS controller and the first-person character controller. Well, this FPS controller is a prefab. You'll find it in the standard assets. Go down to characters, first-person controller. And if you go to prefabs, there you go, FPS controller, you drag it in and this is what you get. Minus these, which is what we set up in previous tutorials. Left trigger zoom, right trigger run, B button crouch. So if I hit play on my scene, just pick up my Xbox controller, we can move around, we can jump, crouch, and we can run by holding down the right trigger, and we can also zoom. So without further ado, I suppose we should crack on with setting up our use button. Now, this use button can be used to open doors, press switches, all that kind of thing, but the method by which it does that is going to be exactly the same for all your objects. So let's just get straight into it and then you can see what I'm talking about. So if we go to edit, go down to project settings, go to input, just going to make sure that I've actually set my X button up. I have. There we go. Oh no, that's the mouse X. Excuse me, X button, we called it X button. Lovely. Okay. Good. Okay, so we're going to need a null to attach our Playmaker FSM to. So I'm going to create an empty object. I'm also going to put it in here somewhere. There we go. Zoom back in. There we go, we can rename it now. I'm just going to call this X button use. Okay. Right, so, oh, excuse me. There we go. Keep signing me out for some reason. Anyway, so if we go to our Playmaker window, select our X button use, right click in this window here, add FSM. Okay, so if you've seen the previous tutorials, you're probably familiar with what's coming. So when we start, it will go from start to state 1 and it'll be waiting for something to happen. So like our other buttons that we set up in previous tutorials, this listener is waiting for a button press. The left trigger is actually an axis, so this one will be waiting for an axis press. So the X button, you guessed it, we're going to be getting a button press. So let's call this listener, like I usually do. Listener. Then we go down to the action browser and we type in the search box get button. If I could spell, that'd be good. So what we want in get button down, we're looking for a button press. Let's get button. Okay, yeah, get button down, that's fine. Add action to state. So what's the button name? It is X button. I copied that earlier when we was in the input. Okay. And then it's saying send event. So we've got these things here. I'm gonna custom events. So that must have been something I already saved out, but you can actually create an event here. So if I go here and add an event, I can type button press, blah blah blah, and add that event. And then that's one that you can select then, but as it stands, it's already in my custom events. Okay, so I'm gonna choose button press there. I don't know if that's actually part of Playmaker. It's picking up on something I've done previously, but you could. I know it's something I've made, but for you, you just go to new event and then type in the name of your new event there, and then it will be listed here as button press like this. Okay, so it's saying event not used by this state or any global transition. Click to add transition state. Okay, so it's added a transition at the bottom, and it's called button press. Store result? No, we don't need to store a result. We just need to know if the button's been pressed or not. So for this, that's absolutely fine. Now, what do we want to happen? So it gets the button down, it detects the X button's being pressed, it passes it on to send event, which is button press, so that's this bit here, and then this gets passed on to the next state of the FSM. So we need to make a new state, and I'm going to call this raycast. So basically, we're going to cast a ray out of the center of the character's head, so in our case the camera, and that ray is going to come out, and if it hits an object, we're going to say, well, what did it hit? And if it doesn't hit an object, we're going to send it back to the listener. So let's set that up. So we need to add an action to this state action browser, and I'm going to go to raycast. Okay, so that'll be this. Cast a ray against all colliders in the scene. Use either a game object or vector 3 world position as the origin of the ray. Get raycast info to get more detailed info. Okay, right, good. So we're going to add that to the state. And, pardon me. Here we go. Right, we're at the top now. Okay. So where do we want to cast the where do we want to cast this ray from? From the game from game object use owner. So use owner would mean we'd be casting it from this null, which we don't want to do. So we're going to specify a game object. It's asking us what that game object is, and so this is our first person controller. And then the camera is actually attached to the object underneath, which is the first person character. So let's go back to our X button use, and we drag this first person character into this field here. Boop. From position, we can leave it none. And the direction, we click this little button here and it will give us a, well, our direction. So vector. And I'm just going to put a 1 in the Z. If I put 2, oh, you can put a 2, but it doesn't make a difference. So let's say 1 in the Z. Space. Can leave that at self. Right, distance. This is how far the ray will actually cast. So I think. Yeah, we've got a debug mode here. We can leave that at yellow. If we click, right, it's a debug. Basically, that means that if you turn this on, we can see the ray in the viewport. So we can see if it's working as we wish. So if I hit play now, and then press X, it should cast a ray. I think we're only going to be able to see that from our scene view. Let's have a look. But we need the game. Okay, so I'll just rip this off for a minute. Okay, and then we can click on this. So you can see the editor view at the top there. And I think... interesting. For some reason it's not firing out. Just drop my controller, and I think I know why it's not firing out. It's because once we've pressed the button, it will fire the ray once, and then it ends there. There's no state to say that it's coming back out or whatever. So we'll worry about that in a minute. Now the distance is 100. 100 what? Well, this is actually a Unity unit, which I think is one Unity unit is 1 meter. So this would be 100 meters. Now it'd be rather stupid if you could open a door from 100 meters away. So that's not going to be very realistic or helpful. So I'm going to change this to 1.5. So from 1.5 meters away, I mean, it's still pretty big distance, but you know, we're not going for hyperrealism here. Okay. So what's the next bit of this? We've got hit event. So basically, if it hits, what does it do next? I'm going to leave this at none for now. Store did hit. I'm going to create a new variable, and I think it might even need to be global. Yes, I think it does. No, actually it doesn't. So let's make a new variable and call it X button. Did it hit? So basically what we're create variable here, there we go. So if we go over here, okay, the type, it should be a bool, so that's fine. It's either a yes or no. That's what a bool means. 1 or a 0, yes or no. So let's go back to our state, and it's going to store did it hit in this variable X button did it hit. So it's either going to be 1 or 0. So we can pretty much leave that as it is. Let's have a look. What else do we need to do? Now we need to store what the hit object is, because this will be a global variable, this one, because it needs to sort of be used globally. So basically what that means is if I create a new variable, that new variable only applied to this final state machine. If it's a global variable, it means that it could be used by this state machine, it could be used by a state machine on another object, and all the rest of it. So that's what we want to do. Store hit object, new global variable, and we're going to call this global oh shit, did it save a variable? No, it didn't. Good. I thought it might have saved an empty one, but thankfully it doesn't let you do that. New global variable. And let's call this X button hit object. So this should store what that object was in a global variable. So that's good. In terms of store hit point or store hit normal, store hit distance, all of that kind of stuff, we don't need to worry about that. Repeat interval. So I gather that's a second, maybe. So repeat interval is 1. I'm going to set that to, set it to 3. To 0. Layer mask we don't need to worry about. Invert mask we don't need to worry about. And debug, we'll leave that off for now. Actually, we're going to turn it on later anyway. I'll just leave it on. Okay, so what happens after we've, cast array? So basically, listeners listening for a button press, if it detects a button press, it goes to ray cast, casts its ray. It casts a ray 1.5 meters. It asked did the object hit anything, and if it did, what did it hit? And it stores those things in variables that we've created here. And then after it's done that, we want it to go to a finished state. So it finishes and then passes it off to the next stage. So let's connect this to this. So we've got at least that bit set up. And then we're going to create another state, and I'm going to call this state did Ray hit an object? That'll do. I might resize this. Actually, I don't need the inspector, so let's shrink that down a little bit and drag this over. There we go. Did Ray hit an object? And within this state, we're going to need our Boolean operation in our variable here. So, okay, it's a bool. X button, did it hit? So that's either going to be yes or no, 1 or a 0. So we're going to need to grab that information in here. So if we go to the action browser and type in bool test, yeah, there we go. So you can see it's under the logic category there. Add action to state. So the bool variable is X button, did it hit? That's what we want to test. Is true. We've got all of the we can store that in a variable. So if it's true, sorry, not in a variable, a state even. So let's create events. Okay, let's add an event. So we've got yes, and we've got no. Okay, so let's add these events here. Add transition. Yes. Let's add the other one. No. Okay. So basically what happens now is this bool test will say, did the ray hit anything? If it's true, go to yes. If it's false, go to no. And then we can pass these two things off to two different things, which is what we want. It's really helpful. So I know I'm repeating myself here, but I just want to make it clear what's happening. So this is listening. It's looking for a button press. It detects a button press and passes it onto the raycast. This thing casts a ray from the Z direction of the camera. It sends it 1.5 meters. Then it asks, did it hit? If it did, it stores it in a variable. Well, even if it didn't, it stores it in the variable. It will either be yes or no. Store hit object, and then it stores that object in a variable. And then after it's done that, it passes off out of here into did Ray hit object. Right, so if the ray, let's start with no. So if the ray didn't hit an object, it doesn't need to do anything. It can go straight back to the beginning, to the listener, and we start the whole thing over again. So, did the ray hit an object? No, it didn't. Well, go back to listening for a button press then, because you don't need to do anything. But if it did hit an object, we need to pass it onto the next state. So, we don't need to worry about every frame because you're not pressing the button every frame, so don't worry about that. Let's add another state, and we're going to call this, let's call it something, I'm going to call it send event to hit object. Okay, so in this state, I want to send an event to an object that isn't our character controller or this null. We want to send it to the object that, you've clicked on. So, send event to hit object. What we're going to need here. So if you go into the action browser, you guessed it. It's going to be called send event. That's what we need. Okay, so I think it's this one here. So, okay. So the event target, okay, so it's not going to be this ourself, it's going to be a game object. Okay. And then it's going to ask us what that game object is. Well, we're not going to know what that game object is until we've cast a ray and it's hit it. So we can actually specify game object here. And there's no point us putting in the name of an object because we won't know what it is. That's the ray's job. The ray is going to shoot out, hit that object, and if you remember, this ray casts out. It asks did it hit, and it asks store hit object, and we've stored it in this variable called X button hit object. So that's what we need to use. So if we click this little button here, it says none. We can go into a global variable X button hit object. So whatever it is that this ray hit and detected is what will populate this field here. Okay. Send to children, we don't need to worry about that. Send event, button press. Okay. No delay, we don't need to do that every frame either. So we just need to link yes up to this now. Didn't like that, did it? For Christ's sake, come here. There you go. So we can put that there. And then we can link this back up to the listener. We actually just to put a transition on there. That just finishes, and then we can drag out finish to the listener. There we go. Just get in there, will you? Fine. There we go. So now we've got our loop complete. So let's try running it. Okay, so you can see that the listener's highlighted there. Cast array. And you can see that it's just looping back. So raycast, it raycasts out 1.5 meters. Did it hit an object? If no, it goes back to the beginning, which is exactly what's happening because I'm too far away from an object. So you can see that the bottom event in our loop is not being highlighted. But if I get closer, you can see that it's actually hitting an object now. And it's detecting that. Okay, so now we've got a raycasting system in place. I'm just going to unpause that, drag out the game window. No, come on, come here. And I'm going to see if we can actually see our ray in the event. There we go. You can see it shooting out. If you look at if you look up here in the Z direction here, you can see the ray shooting out. 1.5 meters. So that's what the debug mode does. It allows us to see our ray to see if it's behaving like it should. Okay, cool. Right. Next bit then. Now we've got our raycasting system up, we need to obviously make it have a use, really. That'd be helpful. And to do that, I'm going to pop over to Cinema 4D quickly. I've made this door. All it is a simple door. It's got a handle on it on both sides. So it's in a null called door. That's the whole thing. We've got a door frame, which is obviously static, doesn't need to go anywhere. And then we've got the actual door itself. And you notice that I've put the pivot where the hinges are, so it can actually swing like a door. And then as a child of the door, I've got the handle. I've got the base of the handle, this object here. Again, it doesn't really matter where the pivot is for that, it's never going to move, but I've made sure the pivot for the actual handle part itself is where it should be so it can turn. Okay, and obviously I've made the door handle and its base, these two items, a child of the door, so when the door swings open, it takes the handle with it. So that's all I've done. So what I'm going to do now is export this scene. Let's have a look. So file, save as. I'm just going to call this door and then save it. Go back to Unity. Oh, excuse me, I've saved it in the wrong place. Pardon me, save as, and quit that out of that. There we go, there's our Xbox controller file that we've been using. So, assets. Oh, I haven't actually got any of my own assets in there yet, so I'm just going to create a folder in here, call it imports, put the hashtag in there so it's at the top of this list, and then I'm just going to save this as door.c4d. So hopefully we can go back to that. It's having a think, it's detected a change. Okay, so now we've got this imports folder, and we've got this door. Remember, it used to be in Unity 4, that you could leave the scale factor at 1, but I should imagine because they wanted to accommodate 3ds Max users, they've changed it so now you've got to put 0.01, and then if we pop this down to the bottom, apply, have a little think about that, so it should be the correct scale now. And we drag this door into our scene. Just having a little think. Okay, and there's our door. It's in. Nicely lit. It's at 0 in the world. And as you can see, our FPS controller is now sitting right on top of the thing. So I'm just going to drag that back a little bit. Go to our game view. Yeah, and there's our door. In fact, what I might do, because I think... No, it doesn't matter. You can open a door from any side, so I don't know what I'm thinking. Okay, so now we've got our door object in there. So, what do we need to do now? Right, we need a final state machine on our door now. The great thing, I should mention this actually, the great thing about Playmaker is you can actually, so if you set up a state machine on our door, obviously that's a state machine that can be used on every door that swings open anyway, any door that's like this. So instead of having to set up the same final state machine over and over again, we can actually save it out as a preset. So any time we want to create an FSM, we can right click and paste template. So you can save out your own template. And we'd call that door FSM, door open FSM, something like that. Okay, so on this door, we got a C4D editor object in there. Okay, good, whatever. So we've got a door. Okay, so we've got the door null, which contains all the items in there. Yep. And then we've got the door, which is just the. Oh, actually, that's the whole thing as well. And then we've got the actual just the middle bit of the door frame. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. We didn't actually have to put that in a null called door because the actual file itself is kind of acts as the group header. So I really didn't need to do that. And in fact, I could go into Cinema, take these objects out, delete the null, and then just save as, save over. Then go back to Unity, it'll update. We can get rid of this now. Pull this in. And there, we've just got everything under door now. I can get rid of the C4D editor. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So, this door is going to need an FSM now. Let's crack on with this. Add FSM. Okay. So, what we're going to do, as always, I'm going to call state1 a listener because it's listening for something. Listener. Oh, if I could spell, that'd help. Listener. Okay. So, what do we want to do in our door? Well, we're going to add a transition, custom event, button press. Okay, and the reason we've called it button press is because in our FPS controller X button use, here it says, did it hit an object? Yes. It shoots down to this thing and it sends an event, button press, to the object that the ray hit. In that case, this is going to be our door. Or, well, it could be any other object, but say you've got several doors and it's got button press, you're thinking, well, it might send an event to all of the doors to open. It won't. It'll only send the event to the object the ray hit. So that's fine. We don't actually need to do anything in this. It listens. Well, it's not really listening, but it receives the event button press, and then that's all it needs to go. It will go out of that state. So let's create our next state. Okay. So what do we want to do? We want to open the door, but if you want to get fancy, you're going to need to turn the handle, and then we can open the door that way. So what we could do here is make a state called send event to handle. Okay. And in that event, you guessed it, we're going to need a send event again. So we've already got it up there. So, okay, the event target is going to be a game object, just like it was before. Game object is asking us to specify. So we put specify game object. Now instead of picking a variable here, one of these, we don't need to, because we know what the game object is called. If we roll down this, the game object is door handle. Although the door handle's pivot doesn't seem to be in the right place. If you do get that, it's probably because Unity is looking at the center of the object instead of its actual pivot. So if you click this button, okay, so we want local, yeah. If you click the pivot button, so now it's set to center. If you click that, it will set to the actual pivot of the object. Okay. So yeah, basically we're sending an event to this object. So if we get back to our door, we called it send event to handle. It's asking for the game object is this door handle here. Lovely. Send to children, no. Delay, no, we don't need to worry about that. Every frame, no, we don't need to worry about that either. Okay, so this door handle, we've actually got a delay time there. I wonder if it will delay passing on. Okay, I might test that in a minute, but there's another thing you can do. It's probably going to do exactly the same as this delay, and it's called wait. If you go to the action browser, it will wait a specified amount of time. I'm going to see if I can do it with this delay, so I'm not going to put that in. And then we need the out state of this, which is going to be add transition, so it just finishes. So it basically does this. It sends an event to the door handle, and then goes on its merry way. Oh. It's going to need to know what event to send. So if we look in here, specifies game object with the handle, send event. It wants to know what the actual event is. So we need to create an event. New event. Is it going to be a global event? I don't know, actually. No, I don't think it will be a global one. Let's just call this event push handle. Boom. Okay. Yeah, let's make it a global event. Okay, cool. So send event, push handle. Well, it's going to need to be a global event actually, because it needs to send it to the handle, which is a separate object, which doesn't, it's not part of this FSM. So yeah, it does need to be a global event. Okay. So what happens then? We come out of the finished state. We're going to need another state, and I'm going to call this one opening. So this basically opens the door. And how are we going to do that? Well, the door's pivot is where it should be. So we're going to need to rotate the door. So if I select this door object and then go to the rotate tool, we want the door to do this. That's what we want it to do. So if I click on opening, we're going to need to rotate that object. Now, like before, we used an iTween. I'm going to type in iTween, and there should be a rotate in there somewhere. Okay, iTween rotate to. There we go, that's what we need. Add to state. Yep, sweet. That's the FSM. Here we go. iTween rotate to. So, game object, use the owner. And that's correct because we want the door to rotate. ID, none. Transform rotation, none. Vector rotation. Now we do want this. You can either do it as a variable, which we don't want to do. We want to click this little hamburger menu at the side there, and it will ask us where we want to rotate to. So we don't want it to rotate. Well, we do want it to rotate if it detects a button click. So we've got the door selected. If we look up here in the inspector, we can see that its position is 0, minus 180 and 0. So that's fine, 0, 0, 0. But where do we want it to rotate to? Well, if we open the door to where we want it to rotate to, so I'm going to say that'll do. And then we look back up at the inspector, you can see that its rotation is a minus 287, blah, blah, blah. So we can take this value and copy it. And then we can actually control Z so the door goes back to its position that it was initially. And then we can paste that rotation that we got in to our Y to match what's in the inspector. Okay, so that's that done. Underneath is time. So that would be the time that it takes for the door to open. I'm going to say 2 seconds. That's not too long. Delay, we don't want any delay. The speed, we don't want any because that's been defined by the time it takes anyway. Ease type, so it's linear at the moment, so if you hit the door it'll open in a very linear fashion. I like to use ease in out quad, so I'm gonna where is it? Ease, no, there we go, ease in out quad, there we go. It just gives it some nice sort of like natural fall off at the beginning and the end kind of thing. Loop type, we don't want it to loop, so none. Space, we don't want it to rotate in wild space. Yeah, we want it to rotate itself. Okay. So now we get down to the event. Start event, we're just going to leave. Finish event, doesn't matter. Real time, stop and exit. We don't need to worry about any of that. This iTween rotate from, I think I added by accident earlier, so I can delete this. Remove action, there we go. So we've just got our iTween rotate to. And that is it for that stage. So obviously once the door's finished opening, we want to be able to close it again. So we're going to need to come out of this state. I'm going to add a transition, finished, that's fine. I'm just going to hook these up. Boop. There we go. There we go. And then I'm going to add another state, and I'm going to call this one listener 2. because it's listening for something to happen again. Listener 2. There we go. And we're basically doing exactly what we were waiting for on that one, which is, if we go to the initial listener, nothing's in there. We're going to copy that. Add transition, button press. So if there's a button press, it shit, didn't quite get there. Oh, it's because I'm on that little map at the top there. Alright, so drag that out and connect it to this. Yeah, lovely. There we go, it's a bit better. Okay, so this is going to be waiting for a button press again. And so the next state we're going to add is going to be the opposite of opening. So this is going to be closing. That's what we're going to call it. Closing. And I'm just going to copy this I-tween rotate to. So I'm going to copy selected actions, go into my closing, paste actions, and where we change this to Y, everything else is left exactly the same, but we want it to its closed state, which is minus 180. So we're going to just type that in there. Connect this up. So it's listening for another button press. Once it's been opened, you press it again and it closes. And then we're going to add the transition state, which is finished, and connect it back up to the listener. Okay. So let's give that a little whirl then, shall we? Here's my player. I've got my raycast system. So at the bottom there, you can see the door's FSM is waiting for something. Go up to the door. Now, for the ray to actually collide with an object, that object needs to have a collider on it. That's something I forgot to mention. So if I stop this here, select the door. So if you look at the inspector, you can see you've got a mesh render on there. We've got this Playmaker FSM, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go down to the bottom and say add component, physics. It needs a collider. In this case, if it was a complex mesh, like a little statue or something, you might want a mesh collider or something a little bit more complex. But this door is essentially a box, so we're just going to give it a box collider. And that's absolutely fine. You can see that down here near the bottom. There you go, there's the box collider. So now, hopefully, when we hit play, when I go up, my ray should be able to interact with it now. So I hit it, and there you go, swings open. And so you could see that it went to its opening state in the FSM, and now it's on listener 2. It's waiting for the event button press again. And if I hit it again, it goes to the closing, and then once it's finished doing that, it goes back to the listener button. You can see some clipping there, and that's to do with my camera. We might as well solve that while we're at it. If I get too close to the door, you can see that we're getting some clipping. So let's solve that. If we go to our first person character and go to these camera settings here, clipping plane's near 0.5, so that's a half a meter, and far is 1,000. So 0.5 is obviously not close enough, so let's change this to 0.01. So that's equivalent to 1 centimeter. Let's hit that again. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, there we go. You can get butt up against it now, it doesn't matter. Right, so I'll go up to the door. In fact, let's get back here. If I'm hitting X now, the door's not opening because the ray's only been cast 1.5 centimeters. But as I get nearer, there you go. It opens up. I'm just going to make sure that we've got our X button use selected so you can see the FSM. And click back on here. Okay, so there we go. Oh, no. We don't want to... Where's our door? That's what we're looking for. Okay, there's our door. There's our FSM for our door. So it's listening, goes to send event, to handle and then goes to opening finished. Listener button 2, hit it and it should go to closing. And then when it finishes, it goes back to the listener. There we go. Okay, so there you have it. We've got our door opening and closing. Now you're probably thinking, at this state, when you can see we've got the listener waiting for a button press. When we hit it, it goes to send event to handle, immediately leaves and goes to opening. So you're probably thinking, why is that send event to handle there? And it's because of the next step. So if you want to get a little bit fancier, what we're going to do is, let's have a look at our handle stuff. So let's choose the door frame, the door handle, and let's set up a FSM for just the handle. And FSM, I'm going to call this a listener as usual. And in our listener, we don't actually need to do anything. We just need to add a state, add a transition, finish custom events. So we've got button press, no. Okay, so really what I'd do is I'd go to our events, add an event, and I'd call it push handle. And it would create it in my list here. But as it stands, I can actually go to add transition. And in my custom events, I've already set up an event called push handle. So it just creates this. So where do we go from there? We add another state, and I'm going to call this turn handle down. Okay. And then it's basically just like the door. We're going to add a iTween rotate too. So we go up here, iTween rotate to, add action to state. We go back up to the top. So the game object that we want it to affect is the handle itself. So we can leave that at use owner. Don't worry about the ID or the transform rotation. It's the vector again. So if you look at the current state of the handle that we've got selected, rotation 0, 180, and 0. Sorry. I think that's right. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, that's good. So we want this to be well, actually, we've got to find out what rotation it is. So let's turn the handle down. Oh yeah, so it's the Z that we're actually moving. So in here, we want the X to stay where it is. We also want the Y to stay where it is. So let's give that 180. And Z is currently at 0, but when we turn it, should we go to something like, yeah, about that? And if we look in the inspector, that's about 60 degrees. So we can type 60 in here, that's fine. The time it takes, we don't want it to linger too much, it's just a handle, we just, it makes it a bit fancier. Let's make it 0.8 seconds, that should be enough time. We don't need to worry about the delay or the speed. Ease type, I'm going to choose my favourite ease in-out quad. Loop type, none. Space, we're going to make that self. And the start and finish events is left alone. That's absolutely fine. So add transition, finished. So the listener receives the event push handle. It finishes that. It comes out, goes to turn handle down. It finishes that event. So what do we need then? We just need to create a state called turn. Oh, so I'm not typing in it for some reason. Turn handle up. That's all we need. So really, this turn handle up that I've just created is going to be exactly the same as turn handle down, so I might as well copy selected actions, go to this, paste them in. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we just got that. And we just need to return this Z rotation back to what it was originally, which was 0. So we can... excuse me. I'm over the shop now. So this comes out and goes into this. Come here. Yeah, whatever. There we go. Turn handle up. Yep, the action's set up. So we just need to finish this state as well. And then that goes back to the beginning. We're probably thinking, well, this is listening. So how can you turn the handle down and then come out of that and turn the handle straight up? It'll only do these things if the push handle event has been triggered by the fact that we've sent array to the door. So if we've sent array to the door, it's going to already do this turn handle down. Yeah, I think that should work. Yeah, that should work. Okay, cool. So that's our handle setup. Let's just see what happens when we run this. Okay, so as you can see, the handle is turning, but it's also doing it at the same time the door is. And I've just realised why I've set it up the way I have. This door handle, it turns the handle down. That's correct. And then, the reason that it doesn't go to another state before it turns the handle up is because obviously when you open a door, like we are here, you're going to turn the handle down so you can open the door, and then the handle's going to go straight back up again because you're going to let go of it. That's why. And then it goes back to listening. And then obviously when you press the button again and the door shuts, you don't need that handle to be pressed down again. You just shut the door. So it goes down to open it, but when you're closing it, it doesn't matter. Click. So that's exactly what we want. Problem is, you don't want like the way we've got this. You've got the handle turning before, well, as the door's opening. So it's almost like the door's opening and the handle's turning at the same time. It's kind of, you need to turn the handle first before you can open the door. So we need to delay the door opening for a little bit. So if we go back to our door, what I had set up before, I think I set up some kind of wait event here, but you can actually set a delay, so that might actually work. I'm going to set a delay. Well, how long does it take the door handle to move? It takes 0.8 seconds for the door handle to move. But I don't think we need to wait for it to fully complete, so I'm going to put a delay here of 0.5 seconds. So at least it gives it a chance for the handle to actually move first. Let's see if this works. No. It just delays the whole thing by 0.5 seconds, which is why I added the wait before. Okay, so if we go to our send event to handle, instead of putting this delay here, you don't want to delay the whole thing. What we want to do is action browser, and then we want to go to wait. We want to type in wait. So I'm going to grab wait, add the state to this send event to handle. So what's the time we want to wait for the door to kick off its thing? 0.5 seconds. And that should do it, hopefully. So, okay. Go up to the door, press it, the handle goes down, then the door opens, and then you can shut it like that. There we go, that's lovely. That works great, that. Go through the door, close it, click. So we're really getting there now. We've got a zoom, and I'd just like to point out that our raycast still works when we're zoomed in. We've also got a crouch. We've got a jump. And we've got a run button. So we've got a lot of functionality going on with our controller now, which is great. Yeah, so there you have it. So just to recap, we've created a ray casting system. So we're casting a ray from the center of the camera, and then it's taking the objects. It's checking whether it hit an object or not, and then if it has hit an object, we're storing that object and then sending an event to that object. Whereas in this case, it's a door opening and a handle rotating. But it works very well. Like I said, this is, I've set the X button up as a use button now. So it's not just doors. It could be switches, anything that you can trigger, basically. Anything with a collider that you could trigger by saying, hey, I'm available to the use button, the X button. Anyway, I've rambled on for long enough now. I hope that was of some use to you guys. And as always, check out the YouTube channel and the website at digitalmeat.uk. And I'll see you next time. Bye.